It's like being in the middle of a mass shooting, but it doesn't end within an hour. It goes on for 12 days.
Government buildings shelled, oil depots hit, a TV tower struck, and schools razed to the ground.
This is the first social media war. Twitter sometimes beats the official channels in terms of explosions. Like literally 15 seconds later, there'll be a tweet about it. A minute later, you'd have a full HD picture of it. Previous conflicts, people wouldn't know for years what happened. We try and kind of use it as a tool and as a weapon to save ourselves and our country.
The Kremlin's response has been to plunge ever deeper into tyranny.
I sat my wife down and said, like, look, could be trouble. She kind of looked me in the eye and said, like, this guy wants us dead, Ukrainians. We can run away, but where are we going to run to? I mean, are we going to run to Poland? I mean, he'll be knocking on the door there, like, within a few years if Ukraine falls. You go and fight. Do whatever you do best. You know how to work with the media, work with the media. You did your army training, you know how to shoot a gun, go shoot some Russians, but defend us. It gives you certain freedom to do what's right.
Welcome to the Jess Larson Show, where I interview innovators, leaders, and uncommonly high achievers. Today on the show, we've got Igor Novikov. Igor, thanks for doing this. You've been on a lot of different news stations here in America, advisor to President of Ukraine.
The West knew what was going to happen. The West had high probability understanding of what was happening. If the evil is chasing you, I mean, running away is not going to make anything better. The violence and the barbarity that we're seeing has no place in the 21st century.
Can you maybe give people just the tiniest bit of your background? And then we got a ton of Ukraine questions.
Right. Okay. The key word there is tiniest. Okay. Well, I was born in Donetsk, which is eastern Ukraine. So what's happening in Kyiv now and all over Ukraine, I've actually lived through already once 8 years ago. So, Donetsk was one of the first cities occupied by Russia. And this is where this whole thing started, like in 2014. I went to school in Britain. I went to this little boarding school called Uppingham School in the middle of nowhere in Leicestershire. So it was literally like our boarding school and like 20-mile radius of sheep and green grass, and that's it. Then I went to the LSE, London School of Economics. So enjoyed it a lot after kind of living in the middle of nowhere for 5 years. Then I had 2 years working in Moscow for a German insurance company. And then I moved back to Kyiv. So, life has taken me to many different places. My background originally is twofold. So I've got a law degree, although I've never practiced law, and also I've got a filmmaking degree, which actually helps more than my law degree at the moment. I run a local chapter in Ukraine of an international think tank called Singularity University out of Silicon Valley. It's su.org if you want to check it out. That's how I met President Zelenskyy, because my think tank job kind of got me speaking in front of large crowds quite a lot. So I became somewhat of a celebrity in Ukraine. And when Volodymyr Zelenskyy was thinking about running for president, his team reached out to me, asked me to do like a one-day intro program, kind of explaining what's going to happen in the world in the next 5 years because of technology, because of innovation, disruption, that kind of thing. And we kind of hit it off. So I was originally supposed to be advising him on innovation, but because of certain antics of a certain Rudy Giuliani, I had to, switch my job description to US Ukraine. And I was the go-to guy handling containing, I would say, the fallout from the impeachment, the first Trump impeachment. And that's my story. Now I'm kind of back helping them, with the international media and with the US and with whatever I can do for them and for my country. So that's the gist of it.
Yeah. Well, I've been fascinated with Singularity University for years. If we have time, I would really love to hear more about that part of your life here.
Sure.
Before we finish today, or maybe we do another episode sometime. It is fascinating. And for people who don't know, can you tell people just a tiny bit about the founders of Singularity? Because those people are impressive.
It's a very interesting institution. So we have two main founders who are Peter Diamandis, who's literally the guy behind like private space travel. That's to put it lightly. He was the guy who introduced the world to a foundation called X Prize. and they ran a lot of interesting competitions, including, the private space flight, which became later became known as Virgin Galactic. And the second founder is Ray Kurzweil. I mean, I think that guy doesn't need any introduction. He's one of the best futurists in the world. He's an inventor, an amazing thinker, and the guy. Every single time I get to meet him, it's the guy you want to ask at least one question. So that kind of approach. So literally, if you have like the source of infinite knowledge like sitting in front of you, and it's the most difficult thing in the world. So when you're facing Ray Kurzweil, it's just like, and you get one question, you kind of think, what should I ask him? I've asked him lots of stupid questions so far. So hopefully I'll get another chance.
Next time you see him, ask him a question for me, because
Sure.
I have a copy of The Singularity is Near, and that is a thick book. But I never read books. I listen to like 2 or 3 audiobooks a week, and I read like 1 book a year.
Yeah.
So if he could just please get it on audio, it would be like personal favor.
Sure. And that's ironic from the guy who invented speech recognition. Pretty much that speech synthesis. So I'll ask him. But that book is amazing, and so are his other books. And apparently, damn it, I mean, the war kind of disrupted me in a major way, because his new book is coming out. Singularity is Nearer. And it must be out now. I mean, like, look, I got preoccupied fighting the Russians, so I better go on Amazon.
I do want to bring this up, that just before we hit record, Igor said, well, let's go for like 30 or 40 minutes, unless bombs start going off, then let's cut it. That's first for me.
Look, I mean, that's how I describe things. I mean, literally for us, it was like 23rd of February. I got another warning. I have friends in the US within the intelligence community. So like on a friendly kind of level, they told me, this thing was serious, like back in November, October last year. But look, it's so unbelievable. I mean, the scale and the sheer, ferocity of this conflict is so hard to believe that 23rd of February, I got another warning that like literally, it's a matter of hours now. So I went, got myself a haircut, filled up the cars, and that was it. So I literally just went home, and, you kind of know it's going to happen, but you don't believe it. So I went to sleep, and then I woke up to the sound of like cruise missiles exploding, like 10 kilometers away from my house. And kind of, to get you an idea of what it's like, I have 2 analogies. One is the one I've been pushing on during all the interviews. One is like, playing a video game about like the Second World War, or, any military conflict, like Call of Duty or Counter-Strike or something like that, and literally going to sleep and then waking up in it. So, that's kind of one way of putting it. But, there's a scary way I've come up with it, like literally today. I was thinking, what does, this constant sense of like an imminent threat and insecurity remind me of? And it's just like, it's like being in the middle of a mass shooting, but it doesn't end within an hour. It goes on for 12 days. And that emotional kind of roller coaster that you're going through, as you live day by day through it, is, it's something really difficult to kind of to explain. So I think, once this whole thing is over, I mean, I'm definitely going on holiday. I mean, the beach is one thing I'm dreaming of at the moment. And then I think once kind of the dust settles, I'll try and find a way to share that experience, because I think it might be useful to people.
It's such an interesting thing to be an outside observer, but to also feel so much more a part of this conflict, because your people have been so great at showing what's actually happening, instead of what the propaganda machine out of Moscow is saying is happening.
Well, this is the first social media war, like a major social media war, because like, look, a lot of people haven't noticed it. And I was lucky enough to kind of to live with the understanding of what's going on like globally, because of Singularity University, like for the last like 6 years I've been a part of it. The world has changed with the invention of the internet. I mean, the way we access information, the quality, the quantity, and the frequency of that information flying at us has changed reality a lot. It's changed the very fabric of how we think, of how we do things, and how we kind of perceive information. So this war, yes, I mean, it's the multimedia and social media war. So, whatever happens, I mean, it's unbelievable. I've since, had a lot to do with what I used to do for the president's office, like back in the day. I've got a very complex system set up to monitor the social media. And basically, like, look, I mean, Twitter sometimes beats the official channels in terms of explosions. So literally, because I'm in Kiev, you'd hear an explosion, and like literally 15 seconds later, there'll be a tweet about it. And then, like, a minute later, you'd have a full HD picture of it with like a proper description of what happened, who's to blame, and what's going to happen in the next 10 minutes. And that's just unbelievable, because like if you think about like previous conflicts, like for example Iraq or Afghanistan, or even like Vietnam War, the Second World War, I mean, like people wouldn't know for years what happened. So that'd be a city level to the ground, and nobody would know about it. Now every single grain of drama that is part of war is with you constantly, and that's really weird. And I'm really happy that we've been blessed with a society in Ukraine that is familiar with how technology works, with how to deal with information. So we try and kind of use it as a tool and as a weapon to save ourselves and our country.
Well, congrats on doing such a good job so far. Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty about the future, but congrats on taking it to the enemy, man.
Well, look, we're fighting what used to be a superpower. Although, I mean, if you look at the way they fight, I mean, you might have second thoughts. But like, given the sheer amount of like people on the ground and hardware that they have within that territory, I mean, if it weren't for social media, if it weren't for like the global attention, I mean, we'd be struggling. I mean, like, seriously, we're going to survive as long as people talk about it. So whenever, there's a Justin Bieber scandal happening, or, something major happens in the world and people kind of switch their attention to something else, then we're in trouble.
I've been watching you on a number of stations, and I wanted to get you on the show because I feel like you only get these short snippets on the news. And I feel like there's more that the rest of us should be learning and helping motivate us to help and to donate to you guys. Let's cover just a couple of quick things. Can you tell us about the conversation with your wife?
About the very first one that we had?
Yeah.
Well, we've had some really interesting conversations. So the first one was weird. That was when I got my first warning of, something might happen this winter, so get your family out if you can. That was back in, I think, November 2021. So I kind of sat her down and I told her. The first conversation, she just didn't believe me. I mean, like, it's like saying the Martians will arrive tomorrow, they have ill intent. So, it's just weird. So she just laughed me off and said, like, okay, you and your friends, from the intelligence community, come up with something, more believable. Then we had a second conversation, I think a few weeks later, when the press kind of started catching up with it, when the Washington Post article came out. So I told her, like, look, I mean, that's the second time we're seeing, a buildup of troops on our borders, and, Putin is slightly unhinged. So, anything can happen. And she said, no, like, look, we'll, the most you can hope for is we'll talk about it closer to the imminent threat. And the final conversation that I keep mentioning during my interviews, we actually had, like, I think a month ago, something like that. So when it was pretty believable that something will happen, although like nobody believed they were going to attack Kyiv, because I mean, it's just so out there, and that, even people with knowledge would deny it. So I sat my wife down and said, like, look, I mean, could be trouble. And yeah, she that's Ukrainian women for you. She kind of looked me in the eye and said, like, listen, this guy wants us dead, Ukrainians, or in harm's way. We can run away, but where are we going to run to? I mean, are we going to run to Poland? I mean, he'll be knocking on the door there, like, within a few years if Ukraine falls. The US, well, the guy's unhinged. There could be World War III nuclear weapons. They're not going to run away there. either. The Maldives, well, it's global warming, so, the ocean level is rising. So, we might as well get a canoe if we move to the Maldives. So, but all jokes aside, she just said, like, look, the best way to make a stand is to do it at home. Even the walls help. And she said, like, look, I'll take care of the kids. I'll take care of all, like, the basic chores and necessities, so you don't have to worry about it. And you go and fight. Do whatever you do best. So, like, you know how to work with the media, work with the media. You know how to fight disinformation, fight disinformation. You want to play some dark arts in terms of disinformation, do that too. You did your army training, you know how to shoot a gun, go shoot some Russians, but defend us. We're your family. We're going to cover, we're going to have you six, but the rest is up to you. And yeah, it's like, look, it gives you certain freedom to do what's right, because if you're hesitant, it's mostly because you have people depending on you. When the people depending on you actually give you a get out of jail free card, in terms of, like, do whatever needs to be done, but make sure this house is intact, this family is safe and everyone's okay, like, look, gives you wings, it gives you that extra 10% strength. It's like the joke we have in Ukraine, like, any BMW, regardless of the engine, if it has an M logo on it, I mean, it's got extra 20 horsepower. So, it's a bit like that.
Wow. What a credit to your wife, man. What a great, inspiring response.
Yeah, I know. I'm still in awe of that decision, because some people left, but I absolutely don't blame them, because it's a question of self-understanding and certain degree of certainty in how you can cope with it, because, like, we worried about the kids the most, and that was one of the driving factors that we even considered leaving. But my wife kind of assured me that, like, look, it's a brand new world, and it might be a violent and turbulent place for a few years still. So it's better to show the kids the real world. I mean, we have what it takes to protect them from everything. So, but they need to see everything firsthand. There's no need to kind of keep them in the cocoon, because it's not going to help them adapt to what's coming next in the world. So yeah, I mean, like, look, we've adapted ourselves to the sound of cruise missiles landing. Our kids have adapted themselves to the sound of cruise missiles landing. And now we have one final task to do. Now we need to adapt ourselves to the fact that our kids adapted to the sound of cruise missiles landing. And that's the most difficult part, because no parent needs to kind of get himself or herself used to the fact that their kids don't kind of twitch at the sound of a rocket exploding. Right?
It's wild.
It is. It's like, it's absolutely surreal. I mean, like, look, for me, it's very important to explain to the Western audience that, like, look, I mean, I've grown up watching, a couple of wars on TV. So, I remember both Iraq wars, I remember Afghanistan. But look, it's all different, because, I mean, all wars are bad. But, like, this is the first time I'm not only living through it, I'm actually seeing a major war happen in a place that's so reminiscent of, like, LA or New York or Dubai or Paris. I mean, like, definitely we're nothing like Kabul, we're nothing like Baghdad, right? This is just like Europe. It's a place that gives you that full sense of security. So, whenever you're, like, I don't know, drinking Greek coffee in Athens, or, looking at the Colosseum in Rome, or, walking down Champs-Elysees in Paris, I mean, the last thing you think about is that at this very place, in a few days, there could be rockets landing and, bullets flying. And it's like, witnessing that, I mean, it's been 12 days. I mean, for 12 straight days, I go to sleep and wake up to the sound of explosions. I live with that constant kind of feeling that, we can have Russians kind of shooting at our front door, like, tomorrow. At the same time, I still didn't get used to it, to not understanding the fact, but to comprehending it. I mean, that's the most difficult part, because it's like, every single time you go to sleep, you go like, no, it's just a bad dream. I'm going to wake up and, there's an espresso waiting for me at the coffee shop next door. And you wake up, nope, nope, we're still in that hell. So, and it gets worse by the day as well.
I know that a lot of reporters and people have been trying to get you to break operational security and say, like, are you Zooming with the president? What are your calls? How do you describe the communications that you do have while keeping OPSEC?
We're trying to fool the Russians. We use Tinder mostly. No, okay, of course I'm not going to tell you how we did it. I mean,
No.
like we use intermediaries, we use secure channels, that's as far as I can go. I mean,
Yeah.
look, people need to understand that certain things, I mean, the world has changed. One of the stories I was actually telling during my keynotes before the war was the saddest story about the terrible effects of a digital footprint in Kabul. So like literally when the Taliban was kind of literally like running over Kabul, and it happened like in literally 24 hours. People didn't have the time to delete their Facebook accounts and like their messaging history and everything. And lots of civilian lives were lost because of that. Because somebody was saying like, screw Taliban, and then they forgot to delete the message, and there they are. So like data and, technology and information that we have extends beyond, illegal MP3s and Netflix and, and whatnot, right? So it actually has physical kind of qualities that directly affect your security. So I'm not going to tell you where I am. All I can tell you is I'm in Kyiv, and I actually can't have to get people to actually believe that. I've taken a few photos today to just kind of say hi in places in central Kyiv. But yeah, I'm in Kiev. I'm not going to go further into detail because, like, look, especially people exposed publicly. So people who do interviews, people who are close to Zelensky, we're most at risk, and our families are at risk because, although I mean, like, everyone's at risk. One of the scariest things that I've heard today from a few of my colleagues was the fact that we've actually, during interrogations of Russian prisoners, the captured Russian soldiers, they've concurred with the information we already had that the Russian army has been given explicit orders to shoot at civilians. So they're not discouraged, they're actually encouraged to do that. And we saw it happen in Irpin, northwest of Kiev, like literally yesterday when, people were fleeing, civilians were fleeing, and they were shooting mortars at the backs of unarmed civilians and killed the entire family with kids and everything. Actually, it turned out that, a friend of mine knew the woman who was killed with their family. So, by the way, that's another weird observation and, really tragic and scary observation that I made. Like, you have your Facebook friends. And, because of like my keynotes and everything, I was never like social media active in terms of like subscribers or whatnot, right? But, I have nearly 5,000 friends. I keep deleting to make sure I can add new ones, and about 7,000 subscribers. But at the same time, like when you have 5,000 friends, yes, there's a likelihood there'll be some people killed in a major conflict out of your friend list. But when it's like over 20 people over 12 days out of 5,000 random people that you have, that kind of gives you a sense of like, you don't need to be a data scientist to kind of to realize that the scale of tragedy and human loss that's already happened in Ukraine is slowly getting uncovered, but it's only going to be uncovered once this is all over. And I think it's going to shock people because it's way above what's being publicly confirmed and said on TV, unfortunately. So it was the same with COVID, by the way. It's just like, people saying like, COVID doesn't exist. And, oh, no, only a few people, like, he's got COVID. Out of 5,000 people in my friends list had COVID. And then suddenly everyone had COVID. Then we started seeing people dying in my friends list. It's very similar to that, but at a much larger scale.
It's genuinely inspiring what you guys and your president have done to galvanize the rest of the world, standing up to a bully, doing the hard right thing instead of an easy wrong thing. It's like a genuine service you've done to all the rest of us to set the example of what it looks like to stand up to evil. I'm interested, when you think about all the things that are getting said about President Zelensky, what do you think people don't realize? Like, I'm sure it's different being there when you actually know him, when it's not, like in some ways he almost seems like an action figure because he's like a movie star, action star. You know what I mean? Like, that
Yeah,
guy's
yeah.
the man, right? But you actually
Well,
know him. This is a real
yeah.
person. This is, I mean, I can just tell how inspiring he is to you personally. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, well, he is a very inspiring, very courageous man. But since I know him a bit more than other people, I can tell you there are two elements to this kind of perception, to the public perception of him now. Um, First of all, he's just an ordinary guy, and people in this world, full of Instagram filters and fake everything, like fake faces, fake bodies, and fast fashion, special effects in movies, deep fakes, whatever. People are so used to everything being fake, they actually enjoy the scarcity of that sincerity when they come across it. So, put anyone who's not a politician in this place, put anyone who's just a genuinely nice guy from the street in this place, and you'd have another Zelensky. It's just a question of context and circumstances. So that's one element of of the legend that he is. The second element is the fact that, this guy is a collective portrait of Ukrainian people as a whole, as a collective. I mean, like, look, there are so many stories of bravery and courage and, defiance in Ukraine at the moment that, he's just the one getting, the 10 minutes of the spotlight. But like, literally, like, look, couple of stories, like from my own experience, we're standing in the queue. I mean, for the first couple of days, there was shortage of everything in shops and people were unprepared. So like literally to get milk or to get bread, you had to queue up and be lucky. So we got a phone call that one of the local stores in our area was receiving a shipment of milk. So we queued up and we're standing there and we literally like have a lot of milk. Yeah, but by kind of stocking up. And there's a guy standing behind us and he goes like, and he's only got like one carton of milk there. And he goes, guys, could you sell me some of the milk you're buying? Because I've got 3 kids under the age of 3 and they need a lot of milk. And we went, yeah, sure. I mean, like, look, everyone's helping everyone. And then he says the cutest thing. He goes like, do you have kids? And we go like, yeah, we have a 2.5-year-old and a 13-year-old. And he goes, do you by any chance have any Pampers? Or Huggies or something, because 3 under 3 they do tend to pee a lot. And we just potty trained a 2.5-year-old, so she didn't need the pile that we had. So we had him drive to our house. We gave it for free to him, and then it turned out that he's a surgeon living next door. So at the time of war, knowing a surgeon actually helps. And it's those people, moments of like pure good that are happening are worth all the evil that's happening, if you know what I mean. And also the stories of bravery. I mean, we have soldiers who blow themselves up to save like 50 comrades, and that's a normal occurrence. So that kind of heroic attitude seems strange to the outside world. They only saw it in the movies, but we see it every day, and that makes us who we are. So, in a country where you have people like that, you just can't be a bad guy. I mean, it's impossible. All the bad guys fled to Russia. So,
one of the other things, like I'm so inspired by the regular Ukrainian women that keep getting on the news. Like, I knew Ukrainians are tough. I grew up near Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, where, for people who don't know, Canada has like one of the largest Ukrainian populations in the world, right? And so like I grew up on like pierogies and kubasa, and like we thought, right? And so I knew Ukrainians were tough anyways, but like I love when these reporters are like trying to get women to feel sorry for themselves, and your fellow countrywomen are like, no, are you kidding? We're gonna take it to this guy. Like, we're not gonna lay down. Just inspiring, man.
Well, they are like that. It's just like, and those like little nuances, little like elements to the whole picture are incredible. For example, my wife was like, I got myself a Kalashnikov. It's really easy to get a Kalashnikov in Kyiv now. And there's no armed violence between Ukrainians. That's the most interesting and inspiring fact, because like, they haven't legalized weapons in Ukraine like properly with a few exceptions of like, special weaponry for hunters. For ages, citing the fact that, if we legalize weapons now, Ukraine's not the richest country. I mean, we're going to see an uptick in gun violence. None of that happened. Everyone's got a Kalashnikov now, and everyone's really chilled about it. But I got myself a Kalashnikov from the government, and I tried teaching my wife how to use it. And that her response was just unbelievable. As a wife and as a woman, and my wife is interesting because she used to be a commercial director in charge of merchandising for a female movement called Femin. If you've ever heard of them, those were the women who showed breasts to Putin, and I got them really pissed off. Yeah. So yeah, anyway, I tried teaching her how to use a Kalashnikov, and she goes, I'm not going to learn. I was just like, why? Because it's not my job. You're the man. You should. I mean, are you really going to lose a gunfight and, endanger your family in such a tragic way that I need to know how to shoot a Kalashnikov? It's just like, okay, fair enough. I'm just going to be John Rambo. But then she did the funny thing. And then she, like, literally 10 minutes later, I caught her actually watching a tutorial on YouTube how to shoot a Kalashnikov. So, there's so many levels to that gender kind of conversation happening. It's unbelievable.
Wow. Well, listen, you've got more important things to do than talk to me. What do you want to leave people with? What haven't you been asked that you wish reporters were asking?
Nobody's asking what's next, because what blows my mind, especially like I keep criticizing the Western business for doing for earning money and paying taxes in Russia, like there is a tomorrow to this old world that we still live in. I mean, the world's going to change a lot, not only geopolitically because of this. There's no coming back to how things used to be. So COVID plus this war, I think that's going to flip everything upside down. And like, look, we have two futures ahead of us. One is the future of, really scary perspectives and scary kind of outcomes. So, very anti-utopian. It's still not fully predetermined what that future is going to look like, whether it's going to be more of a Mad Max kind of scenario, or, the day after tomorrow, or I don't know, whatever. Don't Look Up, the recent classic from Netflix. But there's an anti-utopian future, and there's actually a decent future of abundance. I mean, like, people don't realize that we've invented and scaled a lot of technology that can make our lives truly better. I mean, we can live longer, we can explore Mars, we can go to the moon. I know it sounds corny, but it's true. We can cure disease, we can make sure everyone's got enough for everyone. So like, literally any like global challenge that we have is solvable. But in order to do that, we need to upgrade ourselves and the way we see things and the way our minds work. Because we still live in that scarcity model of, if I don't have enough, instead of playing it a non-zero sum way and, collaborating to create more, I'll pick up a stick, go knock my neighbor on the head over the head with it, and, take his stuff. That needs to end, because with the tech that we have at our disposal, we have enough power to create a bright future or to destroy civilization as we know it. And it's being decided right now. So, kind of do with it whatever you please. But the best way to kind of to forecast the future is to actually create.
Yeah. Listen, a lot of people listening today are probably going to want to donate. And, they hear about bravery of you, your wife, your countrymen. In your opinion, what's the best thing to donate to? What do you feel like could use the money the most?
I would say pay attention to, first of all, the funds that you donate to. So, I mean, the president's office in Ukraine and our government is updating the information of the trusted funds and, the verified funds, because there are plenty of scammers out there. And the last thing I want is for people to make money of this war. Secondly, in terms of what we need the money for, at the moment, we need the money for humanitarian needs. So obviously, we have a huge number of refugees leaving Ukraine. The situation on the ground is difficult. Just imagine your life like being disrupted overnight. So you no longer have a job or savings or anything. If you're lucky to have roof over your head until a Russian bomb lands there. So, obviously, it takes a lot of money to kind of to get those people back to that comfortable daily life. And later we'll need a lot of money to rebuild Ukraine, because it seems that one of Russia's main objectives is to destroy everything we have. Our airports, our roads, our shops, our parks, our monuments, our cinemas, like you name it. And it would take a lot of money to get all of that back. And unfortunately, I mean, I know the way the world works too well to understand that once this is over, there'll be a short period of glory and celebration, and then everyone's going to turn away and go kind of about their own business. And so we need the money to rebuild before that happens. Actually, I can prove this point. Let's play a little game. Can you name at least one astronaut from the Apollo 11 mission, the first mission to land on the moon? Can you name one?
Well, John Glenn and Buzz Aldrin, I guess.
Yeah, well, there you go. I'm surprised you didn't name Neil Armstrong, but fair enough. Can you name anyone from Apollo 12 that flew a few months late? See my point?
Yeah.
I don't want Ukraine to be Apollo 12.
Yeah. Well, listen, do you know the website that people can check to make sure that what they're giving to is actually going to get the money to you?
Look, I'm dyslexic with a terrible memory.
No, that's okay.
I'm gonna look it up now. There was one
the
website
office
sent to me by Zelensky's team, and I'll forward it to you.
Okay.
And feel free to publish.
But it's essentially the office of the president. Like if people are Googling office of the president of the Ukraine.
Yeah, president.gov.ua. I mean, they must have something up there. If they don't, I'll make sure they do. Actually, no. If you just give me a second and keep talking, I'll give you the web address really quickly.
Okay.
Tell a story.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this story.
Stole.
I've done like 700 episodes of this, and this is in the top 2 most important interviews I've ever done. The only one that even comes close was recently I had a young woman who escaped the Taliban, who kept not letting her and these 150 girls get to the airport, and things got really crazy, and they were threatening to kill her if she was like taking pictures or calling anyone, and she did it anyways and saved these 150 girls, And
yeah, well, I'll tell you one story back then, the website address. We had this really basic story go over the news like 2 days ago, and I didn't believe it at first. I thought it was fake news. Picture this. There's a residential building, outskirts of Kyiv, like literally like 20-story or something like that, like Soviet style, like typical. There's a woman smoking on her balcony in the middle of the night. It's like 4 a.m. She hears buzzing. Turns out to be it's a drone. It's a reconnaissance drone used by the Russian saboteurs. The woman freaks out because she thinks it can shoot at her or something like that. She's never seen like a DJI or something, DJI before. So she picks up this jar of pickled tomatoes and plums, throws it at the drone, knocks it out of the sky, then runs out of the apartment. She steps on it and destroys the drone. And it was all over the news that although people reported it was gherkins, no, it was tomatoes and plums. But it's actually true. And you don't defeat a country like that, If sophisticated like reconnaissance drones would be kicked out of the sky with it marinated tomatoes. Yeah, the website I got sent by one of Zelensky's advisors called Andrew Mack is how-to-help-ukraine-now.super.site.
Listen, it's truly inspirational. We're all praying for you. We're going to send money your way and try to get more money sent your way. Keep the faith, man.
And pay attention to us, otherwise we're doomed. Thank you for having me.